So this is uh, well, focusing on Hara development. And basically, I was stumbling over discussion. What are we going to call this? And technically, technically, this is a discussion, and that's how I would like it to be. And I talked to Scobie Roshi. Hi, Margot. Hello again. Thanks for joining us. I talked to Scobie a couple of days ago because I haven't been participating in online sitting, and I haven't really done anything with the 49-day group. So my question was, what's the audience? How experienced are they in Hara development? And I realized I was talking to her, we could have a great range as far as that's concerned. And I just want to check something out before we go. So before we go on, Margot, you're relatively new to this coming back. You were at the drop-in a couple of months ago. And Bree, you're relatively new to this, correct? And Francisca as well. So we have, Margot, if you don't mind, I'm going to call you 2.5 beginners. And then Anne, you've been through this and you participated in the drop-ins. And I'm going to gear this towards people at the beginning levels of things. So let's just say for you, Anne, I hope a refreshing will be helpful. I find it helpful periodically. So let's do that. So let me begin by asking. I'm going to ask Bree and Francisca, what is your understanding when we talk about Hara development or Hara breathing? What are we talking about? Bree, could you give me what's your take on that? Let me ask a couple other questions, just see how to organize it. And Scobie Roshi, anything you want to add?
Maybe just that it gets more how to development or how the breathing gets more nuanced. I think with experience, and maybe though in the beginning it's a matter of developing muscles, and the mechanics around it. But I think as an advanced practitioner, it can feel I don't know, soft. Like it can be a lot more of a approach through relaxation rather than through force, I guess.
Okay, thank you. So, let me ask one other question then. For Bree and Francisca, have you done any of the exercises that I have posted online? Okay, well, we'll do some today. So what I want to do is I'm going to take a step back and just go over my view of Hara and why it's important. As a matter of fact, I thought of having something called Hara and why it is good. And I came on this because for those of you who know, well, you know Ellen Ann. Ellen and I did a Hara workshop about 6 weeks ago, and we went through this whole thing. We're a couple of hours into it, actually almost at the end. And someone raised their hand and said, well, why are we doing this? And I thought, wow, that's really a good question, because we put a lot of emphasis in this. And I think it's important to step back and say, well, why exactly are we doing this? So I have prepared a very brief PowerPoint. Okay, so I just want to go over what is it that we mean by Hara. Okay, and I've come to this because really, I would say for the last 15 years, I've been focusing my teaching activities on Hara development because I think it's so important for what we do. And I've come to view Hara as being the intersection of three dimensions. And they are the physical, and we talked about that, and I'll say a little more about that, the psychological and the spiritual. And let me also say, and maybe we can talk about that later, that if you were to go to another Zen tradition or another Zen organization, you probably won't find near the emphasis on Hara breathing or on breathing than we have in ours. And we have good reasons how we've come to it. It's because I think largely because of the martial arts background. And you might go to some Zen traditions don't put any emphasis at all on breathing. So my point is that we are kind of an outlying range of this, but it's fundamental to what we do. So I want to break these down. Physical first, okay? So those of you who have seen my blog, you're familiar with this drawing. You might be familiar with something like this. There are a couple of terms here we look at, okay? If you look at the left on the figure, it's showing the Hara as being basically a fairly large area in the lower abdomen. And in fact, it kind of goes around to the back of the body. The back of the body, the flanks, kind of the hips and flanks in Japanese is called Roshi. And these function as a unit in many ways. And then, I forgot. In this drawing, we don't have this sort of, not the center point, but the focal point of a Hara is called the Tanden. The Tanden in Chinese is called the Dantian. It's roughly 1 inch below the navel, but also inside the body. So it's not just external, like on the skin, which is how I used to think about it. So these are terms that we use a lot. We use Hara and Tanden, and they can be used. Sometimes we can talk about Hara development and Tanden development, really talking about the same thing. And by the way, feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. Well, let me go. Well, or go back in physical. So when we talk about the mechanics of breathing, and won't go into it too much today, that's really from the physical dimension. And Roshi is talking about that it can be refined over time. And in my experience, or maybe I'm just a slow learner, that Hara development is a lifelong process. It can always be refined. We can always go deeper into it, and it requires care and feeding over the course of lifespan, basically. When we talk about Hara breathing, and I won't go into different levels of breathing, we're really talking about a particular type of breathing that involves the lower abdomen, and the lower abdomen stays expanded throughout. And we can go into that later if you wish. But that's it physically, and that's kind of the basic element with that. When someone comes into training, they have to learn the mechanics of breathing, the mechanics of breathing before they can progress to the other planes. So that's the bedrock of things. Now, the psychological dimension. There's a lot that can be said about that, but the term Hara has considerable significance in the Japanese language. And I have a picture of this book here. This is probably the first and the definitive, at least so far, book on Hara to appear, not just in English, but in Western languages. It's published by, I think in the 60s, yes, it was in the 60s, by a German psychologist who was in Japan, and he became interested in this phenomenon. And he has a fascinating chapter in which he talks about the expressions involving Hara in the Japanese language. And let me just go over some of these, and I'll give you a flavor of what this has to mean. But the bottom line, it has to do with developing one's character. Okay? So there's a term Hara no Oki, and that means literally person with a big Hara. Okay? This doesn't translate all that well into English. That's why I don't translate Hara into English, because if you say to someone, "Oh, you have a real big stomach," they may not appreciate it all that much. So, but big Hara is used as if we would say someone has a big heart. Okay. Now, when we go over these sayings, the thing to keep in mind, this is literal. This is not metaphoric. So when we say in English, someone has a big heart, it doesn't mean, you have cardio, what do I call it, megalopathy, where you have an enlarged heart, which is a bad thing. But this means, so big heart doesn't mean your heart is actually big. Big hara means that you have developed hara. Hara gatatsu means the hara rises, and that would translate into English. In English, we say something like someone lost their head. They were running around like a chicken with their head cut off or something like that. This has the same connotation in Japanese. I mean, you've lost it. You kind of got swept away with emotion. And it means that you've lost your hara, you've lost this expansion in your hara. And again, it's literal. When I started learning about this, and I started my Zen training, I thought, well, this is metaphoric. Like we'd say, yeah, no, we don't really lose our heads. But in fact, someone's breathing changes when they are swept away, when they're swept away, say with anger. And by readdressing your breathing, you can bring that down. And then finally, hara no dekita shito, the person who has finished his or her hara. And there's related sayings like the person who hasn't finished his or her hara isn't fit for leadership. That means the person who hasn't done hara development, who hasn't trained in hara, who cannot do hara breathing, if we can be literal about that, doesn't have the leadership capacity of someone who has it. So for those who might have come in through the Institute for Zen Leadership, this is significant. And then finally, there's this spiritual dimension. And I don't like to use the word spiritual very much, but I think this applies here. So are people familiar with the term samadhi? And I know you work with Skogami Roshi, so you should be familiar with the term mushin, which I don't want to get into an argument with her now, but we'll just say it's synonymous. Is everyone familiar with either of those terms? Okay, so the samadhi that we develop, the relaxed concentration from the standpoint of no mind. In our tradition, and in my experience, comes from the quality of breathing. So as your breathing gets more, your hara breathing gets deeper and more refined, then you have a deeper samadhi. And at the kind of the end point of that is, I don't want to dwell on this, but a Zen breakthrough comes from that. And one of my teachers used to, I probably should have added this, had a very simple graph to illustrate this. So we had an XY ordinates, and then a 45-degree angle, with the horizontal axis being the quality of breathing, or we can say the depth of breathing, the vertical being the depth of samadhi. And he described this as being linear. And in fact, it's very much my experience, and what I've seen in students is that the ability to maintain samadhi is very much dependent on breathing. Okay, the other aspect which I put in the in the spiritual category, it could be in psychological, is the development of chi, or ki. So I assume everyone knows what that is. We call this vital energy, and it is fundamental to our training. So it's sometimes called psychophysical energy. And this is a diagram that my teacher liked. And in Chinese Taoist thought, they would say that put the cursor here, the chest is the realm of fire, and the abdomen is the realm of water. in the second panel here, this is to illustrate, they say that if you bring the water to the fire, it puts the fire out. And you get like this awful kind of smoky feeling. And it clouds up your face and mind. That's why this guy doesn't look very happy here. So another way of putting this in these terms, if your hana rises, that's bad. It's bad in number of ways. You're going to lose your samadhi, and there are also consequences to your physiology. But where you want to be is this happy. Yes, Anne.
I was wondering if that's when you're sitting and you get flush.
Yes.
Okay.
That's very common, and you can see that. And then thing to do, we can go into that maybe later, the question and answer period. That's very common. You don't want to get generation of heat in your face particularly, and that flush feeling. Okay. So this illustrates if you bring the fire to the water, it creates steam. And that steam is metaphoric for ki. Okay. Now, this comes from, we get our emphasis in Hara breathing. There was a famous Zen priest named Hakuin. I think, what is he, 17th century Kobe Roshi? That sound right? Roughly? Yeah, 17th century. And he tells a story. He was very ill. It either came from training too hard or it came from having tuberculosis. We don't know. He used the term Zen sickness. And he was near suicide. And someone told him to see this Taoist sage in the mountains in Japan. And he went and he climbed these mountains and saw this guy. And basically, guy told him that the way to your cure is to bring the fire to the water, bring the fire down. And he lived a long life and was very vital, and it cured him of this illness. We've inherited the emphasis of that in part from Hakuin. So that's why I was thinking, if we ever have a theme song for Hara development, Kobe Roshi, I haven't told you this, it's going to be the fire down below. Keep the fire down below. So come back to that. And we got ki. Well, we can get over this. Okay. I just want to talk about, generally questions come up about Hara and health. And it's a segue with Hakuin. And I get asked this a lot. And let me say a couple of things. Traditionally, health was not the reason to start Zen training. In the West, it's associated a lot with it. But that's not to say that there aren't health benefits to it. But it's just that traditionally, people start Zen training because they want to figure out basic existential questions. So there's a famous study published in 1984 in Japan. They looked at mortality from cardiovascular disease among Zen priests, and then they matched them about half. Okay. They matched them with people the same age. So these are monks living in a monastery in Japan, and they matched it with a group of males the same age, and they looked at mortality from cardiovascular disease, and the priests had much less. And it's interesting, the authors explain that as being due to, it could be that they have a vegetarian diet. It could be that they don't have that much stress. And then it said something that could have to do with their religious practices. In other words, Zazen. That's almost an aside. They also said that the priests drank and smoked less than the people in the community. So they weren't exactly very healthy living priests necessarily, but this is a significant study. Half the mortality from cardiovascular disease. Then there's also research, there's something called the Botzinger complex. It's something deep in the brain that regulates breathing. And it's been shown that deepening breathing affects that. And there are a number of health benefits with that. I'm not going to pretend to know the physiology. But when I did track this down, I thought, Botzinger was probably some famous German physiologist and, white coat and so, but it turns out that it was an American who named it after the bottle of wine that was sitting on his table when he came up with the idea. So that's a real Zen answer for you. And then there's something called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, also what's it also called? Get the other name of it. If people are familiar with the heart math device, it's a biofeedback device. It trains in respiratory sinus arrhythmia. What this means is, we think of heart rate. So I have a pulse, say, of 60. That we think of it as a constant each beat. Okay, but in fact, the heart rate goes down when we exhale and increases when we inhale. And in our tradition of breathing, we have very long exhalations. So you can draw a line. There are probably significant health benefits to that because we're slowing our heart down with that. That's respiratory sinus arrhythmia. And then let me just say a couple of things, high points, questions I get asked is, one is, well, should we be doing Hara breathing all the time? And the quick answer is yes, but okay, there's Hara breathing and Hara breathing. But let me show this. This is a diagram also my teacher liked. He looked at stages of Hara development. In the first, this is on the left panel, someone who's naive to this, and their navel points down, which is kind of a sign of unhealth. There's this kind of physiology where you see there's a dent here in this guy's abdomen where you don't have that. There's a Japanese tradition calls this dog belly, and it's not a compliment. Then with training, people develop this dent here, and the navel points kind of straight ahead. Then with even more training, it points up. But I like to think of the progression of Hara development. I do it in more pedestrian terms. So if someone starts out, as I did, and probably we all did, and I've been teaching this for almost 45 years, and I've had few people come in with any facility in the ability to do this, but this being Hara breathing. The major exception that has been opera singers, or people that have really had voice training. But anyway, people have no sense of Hara, and then you learn about it and you try and figure it out. And then you become aware of the tanden. That's that point roughly 1 inch below the navel. And my teacher said, it starts with you feel a sensation in your tanden. So can you do that if you can image that? Then we start with abdominal breathing. So abdominal breathing is related to Hara breathing. That's when the lower abdomen goes in and out like a bellows, like that. So you have to learn to relax the musculature and breathe relaxed that way. Then you go to making it deeper. Okay, once you get those muscles moving, you get them deeper and deeper. And then there's a transition to Hara breathing. Hara breathing is the ability to keep that expansion throughout. Okay, at some point there's a transition. For me, it was very abrupt. And I'm not going to bore Scobie Roshi with this. She's heard this story so many times, and I've written about it. But for most people, it's more gradual. And then there's a transition to Hara breathing. And then you deepen that. And then it becomes automatized. So you do it without thinking. So the sign of a real experienced practitioner is they can do this really without thinking all the time. There are times they might have to focus on it. And Zazen is the best way, one of the best ways to acquire this and deepen it. We all need to give attention to it. But are you doing it without thinking? And that's a sign of maturity with this. So anyway, yeah, this is a cheap plug for the Hara development blog, and I'll give you the information later, and that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And what I would like to do is open this up to questions. I would like to answer any questions that you have and go crazy with them if you want. and then we can go into some exercises after that, and then if there are questions about the exercises. So let's open it. What are any questions you have about Hara breathing, Hara development? Yes, breathe. Well, that's a really good question. I don't think I've been asked that before. So let me say this, and let me focus first on yoga. Yoga has, in yoga, there are all kinds of breathing techniques. And there is a tradition where they do something that's very similar to Hara breathing. And forget the Sanskrit name. It's translated usually as back breathing. If you have a lot of yoga experience, you're familiar with that, maybe remember the name. But it's only one of many. And in my knowledge of yoga, which is limited, but having a lot of people with yoga backgrounds come in over the years, people are not taught to do it 24/7, basically, that this is the major thing. So I will say this, that I don't see any incompatibility. When you're doing yoga, do yoga breathing, or whatever you're doing with that. But then I would ask, if you're training with us, when you're sitting zazen with us, do what we're doing. And in fact, and this I noticed early on in my teaching career, if people came in and some were doing people doing all different kinds of breathing, you could tell, and it affected the group. So I don't see any problem. As a matter of fact, I would see a lot of benefit of developing breathing through yoga and then applying the muscular knowledge to Zen training. As long as when in Rome. Okay. That said, there's the issue of where does that leave you when you're not doing zazen and when you're not on the yoga cushion or mat, whatever it's called. And that is, we really train ourselves to do Hara breathing really pretty much all of the time. And why is that? And I'll go to that. So you would have to make the decision, what is it that you're trying to gain? Now, the difference, and where I think this becomes significant, is that different meditative techniques and different breathing techniques develop different qualities of ki. In other words, when we talk about, and if I'm, well, let me finish these thoughts. So it's really, we would say the quality, the way the person vibrates, the resonance of that person, and different techniques will do that differently. And we try to create within a particular range. And then a student, you have to decide, is that something you want to do? Is this for you? My Zen teacher was he was a school teacher. He taught high school music, but he used a lot of educational analogies. And he said that he would say in the realm of meditative disciplines, there's all kinds of things that you can do. And he said, it's kind of like math, that you start out with addition, and then you go to subtraction, and then you go, where do you go next? Go Roshi, multiplication, division, geometry, whatever. And then if you go on advanced, you go to calculus and whatever. He said, we stop at addition. We basically have, we do one thing, and that's Hara breathing with breathing. And he was not saying right or wrong, but this is what we do. But let me just come from that from another angle. I'm a firm believer in experimentation. And I think the way I view Zen teaching is that it's adult learning. We deal with sophisticated people and they have to figure out what's for them. So I urge experimentation as long as you're clear what you're doing then. Well, now let me come to the question. So I talked about yoga. In Pilates, and I have limited experience with it, and I would say generally with the Western exercise mode, there might be an incompatibility with that, and that is they teach to tighten the core muscles and to keep them contracted. And that's okay because you could develop strength of breathing that way, but you also have to loosen them up for Hara breathing. So it's as long as it's balanced that you're doing both. And some of the exercises we don't get today, I have them online and we have how to development drop in, I think are very good ways to loosen them up. On the other hand, we can on our tradition, I think there are times where we feel, well, we focus too much on the loosening of things rather than the strengthening of things. So you need both. And I know when I've seen a couple of times seen a physical therapist and they say, well, tighten your core muscles. I tighten my core muscles. Well, I'm going to use that word, which I'm avoiding, setting Hara. And then they say, no, tighten your core. And they're not satisfied. They put my abdominal muscles in like that. And then they're happy. Okay, so any other questions? Very personal question for me. I have scoliosis as well. I have kyphoscoliosis. So my spine is curved in two ways. And it's not what they say structural, it's the bones are screwy. And this is, as a matter of fact, that was my road to focusing on Hara development because the jikis would correct my posture and it was really frustrating. And I thought this, but one day I just had it and I said, to hell with the jiki. And then I said, to hell with posture. And like this voice came in the back of my head and said, I'm just going to focus on breathing. Okay. But then something interesting happened. And this happened within the span of minutes. I don't know. Sometimes I think I like these dramatic things, but they just happen to me. So I just focused on my breathing. This was in Sesshin, like 4th day into a 6-day Sesshin. I just don't focus on breathing. I relaxed my lower abdomen. And something happened where I felt I was supporting my body by my breath. And my posture improved. It didn't straighten out the deformity, but I experienced gravity different from that. Mm-hmm. So is it a limitation? Yeah. I mean, maybe I would have gone further in Zen had I not had this problem. Or maybe I wouldn't have gone as far had I not had to work around this. I honestly don't know. But my view of Zen training is no one has the perfect body, really. You can look at these diagrams in books and things like that, and everyone has flaws, and everyone's challenge is to work around these. And when we have, you know, you can see I have one shoulder higher than the other, and struggle with that. When you look at the posture, your ear should be here and whatnot. That's maybe for one person in a million, and everyone has to figure out how do they accommodate that. And this is how I found my accommodation. Now, the wrong ways of wrong posture can affect your breathing, and the musculature is all connected. And and you can work on it both ways. I worked on it from the breathing side, and maybe Margot, that's what I'd recommend for you. I think though, this is enough of a specialty question. Can we back channel at some point? Drop me an email and let's set up a time to go over that online. And then also I have my coworker, Ellen, does somatic exercises, could be very helpful for that. But let's talk about that back channel. Okay. No, it's a really good question. But it does get at the end of the day, there are limits to how much you can separate posture and breathing. I separate them for this from the standpoint of teaching, but it's all one unified whole. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to go over some basic exercises to loosen up the apparatus for Hara breathing.
Thank you.
And you're familiar with this, Margot. I know you're familiar with this, but we have two people, unless you've done it online. But let me say one thing. I have changed, and if you read the blog, I hope I've made this clear in this. I have changed the way I teach this. I changed the way I conceptualize Hara, going from putting a lot of pressure and starting people out so their lower abdomens expanded throughout, to saying, let's relax and let's get a good inhalation. If you can't get a good, deep abdominal inhalation, you can't get a prolonged Hara breathing exhalation. For those of you who are experienced in Hara development, it's helpful to work on the inhalation anyway. I have neglected that over the years. I have a blog post on that on the blog, and I actually have two, and I invite you to look at that. So we're going to go for relaxation at this point. So, okay, first exercise. And just watch me first. I'm going to feel around here. So the point where the sternum ends is called the xiphoid process. It's kind of, I think it's cartilaginous. Now I'm going to take my fingers, make like a knife hand like this, and put my fingertips, again, just watch me, just under my ribs on either side of the xiphoid process. And I'm going to inhale as deep as...
Can I just clarify something? You mean below your last rib, like in the soft tissue?
Yeah, below the last rib on either side of the xiphoid process, or the center line of the help me, sternum. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to insert them like this. I'm going to breathe in. I'm going to exhale, and as I exhale, I'm going to push in under my ribs. I'm going to hold my breath a bit. I'm going to massage here a bit. And then I'm just going to relax, take the pressure off my hands. As a matter of fact, you can take them away and just let your abdomen relax and expand. Okay, don't force it. This should be natural. Any questions before I go? Excuse me, before I go on. Okay. So inhale, exhale, and then put your fingertips up under your ribs. Hold your breath. Now I want you to massage back and forth. And then 3, 2, 1, let it go. Then just take some normal breaths. You don't want to do this a couple times in a row. We don't want people passing out. Okay, now walk your fingers a little further out. Again, up under your ribs. So each side symmetrically a little further away from the xiphoid process. Okay, ready? Inhale. Exhale. Okay, massage up under your ribs. Three, two, one, release. Okay, just breathe as relaxed as you can. You get a nice, relaxed inhalation. Okay. Inhale. Oh, no, walk them out. Excuse me. Walk them out a little more. Inhale. Exhale. And then massage here. Get up under. Three, two, one, release. Breathe naturally. Okay, walk your fingers out a little more. I can get maybe one. This might, you might be able to get one after this. Okay, ready? Inhale. Exhale. Massage. Three, two, one, release. Okay, one more. I can get one more here. Okay, ready? Inhale. Exhale. Massage. And release. Okay, now I want you to just breathe as relaxed as you can. I want you to see if you can feel expansion when you breathe in. Don't worry about breathing out. But don't forget to breathe out. Okay. Okay. Anyone want to comment? This do anything for you? And as I always say, I can take no as an answer. Well, in fact, you probably are. This probably is expanding the range of motion of your diaphragm and the expansion of your ribs, and it'll get more in. Okay. All right, I'm going to introduce one more exercise. These are of my basic set of beginning Hara development exercises. I have the second one, not the first one online. Matter of fact, should do that. And I'm going to walk you through this. Other people have had this before. The first step is to take a deep breath in. Just watch me. I'm trying to inflate my abdominal cavity, my rib cage as much as I can. Then I'm going to exhale as much as I can. And as I do, I'm going to contract my abdominal muscles like I'm bringing my navel to the spine. So at the time I have all my air out, I'm contracting. And I want you to continue to, I got to take a breath. I want you to continue to contract as much as you can, like you're squeezing a fist hard, but this fist is your abdomen. Then you go, I'll do 3, 2, 1, relax. And I want you to instantaneously let go of that tension in your abdomen and just breathe in. Okay? So I'm going to rush you through this. Not good to do with basically a relaxation exercise, but such as it is. Okay? So first step is breathe in. I'm going to raise my hands. So breathe in. Don't raise your hand. Breathe out. I want you to get all the air out and simultaneously squeeze your navel towards your spine, flatten your stomach, and then continue to tighten it, tighten it, tighten it as much as you can. 3, 2, 1, release. So go. Okay. Just breathe naturally now, just relax. We're going to do this 2 more times. Okay, inhale. Exhale. Okay, navel to the spine. Tighten, 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 tighten. 3, 2, 1, release. Breathe naturally. We'll do it a 3rd time. Breathe in. Breathe out. Tighten, 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 tighten. 3, 2, 1, release. We'll breathe naturally. Okay, it's a little crunch for time. Any reactions to this? Or comments? No. Exercise to develop a certain feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is, don't go around, when you work. I've done that. It doesn't go over very well.
This
Breathe.
is like getting ready for Hara breathing, yeah? Like loosening it,
This is
loosening it.
right. Yeah, this is like a warm up, kind of loosening the apparatus.
Okay.
Bree, is there something you wanted to say? So basically, same as in Zazen, a lot of things we do, for every downward motion, there's an upward motion. So I would emphasize the tuck of your chin and the extension from the nape of your neck. And try and do those 2 things simultaneously. For the sake of time, I would love to go on, but Scobie Roshi will start yelling at me saying, we said an hour. And I've enjoyed working with you. Let me just say a couple of things. Number one, we have a Hara development drop-in the last Saturday of every month. And you're welcome to join us. We go over these exercises, answer questions. Anne's been there, Margot's been there, and people are more than welcome. Number 2, Scobie Roshi, could you type in the blog site, haradevelopment.org? People, I have these exercises and a lot more written on that. We're in the process of a redo of the site, so there'll be some changes in it fairly soon, hopefully. And then finally, for those of you who do not sit with a belt, such as we use an obi, well in Japanese an obi, I would recommend it. We sell ones that are tied with Velcro. Does anyone have one here? Yeah, do you have it on? No, okay. So, or you could go to a martial arts store, we can give you a link to another place and get it, but it really makes a difference. That said, oh, wait, I think we're going to have a demonstration. There it is. Thank you, Anne. And enjoy the rest of your training. Enjoy the day.